Hello, I am Nathan Lamont with Evergreen Woodworking, and today I'd like to start out by introducing myself. I'm a woodworker. I've been a woodworker for about 12 to 14 years, give or take, depending on what I've been working on. I was a wood carver first. I started out with just carving simple objects such as this acorn, which gives you the basic fundamentals, and that'll be a project later on that I'll show how to do that. The other thing is something similar to this. This is hobo art. It's very easy and very simple. It'll be another project. And then later on, I'd also like to push another wood carving project called chip carving, which comes into the patterns and such, which will be later on shown how to draw those out. I also would like to start out with some fundamentals as far as sharpening your tools and cleaning up some older tools like this. Some of them have quite a bit of residue on them that need to be stripped and cleaned. Couple things I also like to do is have two type of rags on, one for wax and one for cleaning. I would also like to point out you need a strop once in a while to sharpen your knives and your tools. A strop is usually just one leather side that's rough leather and another side that's smooth leather. You can get this from an old belt or even just an old piece of leather, scrap leather from a leather shop or something. Another thing is a stone. You want to have a good, nice, smooth stone in order to get a really nice blend going for sharpening and making sure your knives and your gouges are edged. Another thing I like to keep around the shop is a couple sandpaper blocks like this. These are normally for your fingernails, but they work really well for cleaning up knives and gouges. Also, I'd like to point out that when you start cleaning up tools, you want a variety of tools with you in order to clean the tools. For instance, you would probably like to get some wire brushes. These ones are pretty torn up, but they still work and they're still pretty good. Also, I've heard steel wool is very adequate to clean up the right sides, and that also comes with these sandpaper blocks. Also do the same thing, as they usually clean good surfaces, such as when you're cleaning up the surface of a block plane such as this. You want to go with the direction that you'll be drawing from or drawing to. Couple other things is I usually like to have a couple saws around. This one right here is a trimming saw for trimming limbs. So if you were in the process of, say, making a handle like this one here shown on this hammer, I took a limb basically and I cut it off of a tree with this, and then I basically made it for this hammer, which is a project I'll show later too for this head right here. Another thing is you really should get is a couple files. Now you can research and look online and stuff of Craigslist, and people are always getting rid of old files, and you just need to clean them up with a good brush like this, and you just brush them clean. Like this one was pretty dirty and now it's all nice and clean. The other thing you want to do is probably get some very small detailed files such as these. One's a round point, one's a triangular point, and one's a flat. These are very good for cleaning up saws such as this one, as it goes right between the threads here with the flat one and right between the threads with the triangular one. Also, you want to have a good rip saw, which this one's short, which is really good for ripping. And then you want a really good crosscut saw, which is this one. Now this was an antique. I got it for about $3. Okay, I cleaned it up. I took away all the residue that was on it. I put a nice coat of wax on it. Even still has the original handle, which is also broken. But it still works just the way it is. It still cuts straight, and it has a pretty good motion to it still. It's got a little bit of damage on the top of it, but it's not on the blade, so it's still a good crosscut. You can tell a crosscut because it has. Tell a crosscut by the smaller thread, or smaller teeth, along with they're still going two different directions. It's still sort of similar to one of these. However, if you look, the teeth are much longer than the ones down here. These are much shorter. Also, you want to get something like a dovetail saw or a back saw. Those are very handy. They got much smaller teeth. They're better for very fine cuts, like if you have to cut a dovetail or a box cut or something. With that in mind, you should also remember that sanding pads are good for making sure that these are very sharp, and they're very good for cleaning the area of a saw. Now, the reason you need to clean the area of a saw is so that it goes into the cut smoothly. Usually I apply a nice coat of wax there, and it just cuts like butter most of the time. You want to also remember that when you're cleaning tools, you should get a number of different products that could be helpful. One, this is a honing solution. You can find this at Lowe's, Home Depot. Most of the retail stores has a honing solution. What this does is you apply this to your stone, whether it's a whetstone or not, and it's going to help clean and sharpen and buff your knife blades. The other thing is Brasso, Tarnex, any of those kind of resolvents, they're cleaners. They're good for cleaning the steel on things, shining things up. You just put a nice little dribble on, and we'll show you later how to clean these up really efficiently. Also, another thing is you should get some kind of like cotton pad. It's very good for applying wax onto the things, or onto the tools on the steel. Another thing is, this right here is a compound. It's generally used on a wheel of some sort if you have a grinding stone with a wheel, but if you're doing it hand just like I do, I apply this onto my leather strop, just rub back and forth, and you just take your knife and you strop across, and then it buffs, and it usually just tears a lot of steel off and flakes onto the strop, and basically the compound will clean the strop for you, so you won't have to worry about getting nicks or dents in your knife from leftover steel pieces wedged inside of the leather strop. An example here also for strops is, here I found a belt at a thrift store. Okay, a thrift store for about 10 cents, 50 cents or so. And what this basically has is, it has the rough side, it has the soft side. It's an old belt that somebody didn't want because it has stains or something on it. It's a woman's belt, mind you. And this, I can cut a chunk of it out. I can put it onto a piece of wood like this, which I bought for $12 at Woodcraft, I believe. And you just put it right across the board. It's exactly the same concept, except I paid only 50 cents for this, and I paid $10 for this, or $12 for that. So that's a good example of a strop, and you want to make sure that you, here I even have another one here, here's a white strop, okay? Same thing, it's just a belt. I just took the pieces off. Same concept. You can get hundreds and hundreds of leather belts for making strops, and then you just apply the compound on there, and you got a nice strop. Another thing you want to make sure you have always is a good mallet. Okay, this is a wood mallet I made probably about a year ago. It's very simple. It's a dowel and a little chunk of oak wood. They're both oak, the dowel and the wood. Very simple buy. You can find it at Home Depot or Lowe's. And then I put a little bit of epoxy on here and a little bit of wood glue on here, just so it made a nice little flat surface, and it's solid and hard. Makes a good mallet. Other things you should always think about is the type of chisels you get. There's always different types of chisels, and if you look at this chisel right here, there is a big old break in the middle. Okay, this chisel is basically worthless to me. However, later on, if you get a grindstone or something, you can grind that down. But right now, I can't do anything by hand. I would have to use a grindstone. So this right here is a very good example of bad chisels. I got this for about 50 cents. Okay, it's a really good example to show for a bad chisel. And if you try to use this, it will usually put a big divot line in there that's risen. And you want to have a flat chisel. Marking gauges, such or scratch-alls, that's what this is. Okay, if you look, it has a very sharp tip. It's very good for if you have a specific something to do. You can push in like that, and that's a good screw starter to screw the screws. Or you can also draw, depending on what you're going to be doing. You could draw with this. I recommend a pencil mainly. This is very useful in a sense. Marking gauges, these can come very pricey at times depending on the ones you get. For instance, this one right here has brass on it. Okay, it's dirty, it's grungy. This is something I may need to clean up later on, but this one was pricey. This one was like a $40 marking gauge. This right here, this thing was like a $3 marking gauge, but it's still dirty, dingy, but it's pretty commonly useful. I will explain how to use these, how to clean them up so you don't lose the residue, because some of these have, and I'm not sure if you can see them, but some of these have inch markers in here, and if you clean them up or sand them or something, your inch markers will disappear, the value goes down. So you always want to also remember those things, that when you do clean up a tool, the value can go down for the tool when you clean it up or you take off certain things, like the original handles. If, for instance, you have a handle that's broken and you want it to look, you know, just about as close as the time period, you might want to research on what kind of material the other one is or what the old one is and try and replace it so it looks the same. Otherwise, your value of your planer will go down. If you're not worried about a value, which I usually ain't, for instance, this hammer's pretty beaten up, and I don't think I would ever actually sell it for the value or price that it actually is. So I threw away, actually burned the original handle that came with it. It's really doesn't mean anything to me. That also goes for some of my favorite tools, such as the saw here that I showed earlier. Okay, it has a broken handle. It's still useful. It still works. Okay, it's not completely damaged. But if I decide later on, I would actually take it off, put a brand new handle on it, just so it looks nice. I don't really need to go and sell it, because this is probably a good $15, $20 or more, because it has the little starter tick here, which is, some people think it's decorative, some people think it's just a starter tick for starting wood while you cut. So, I mean, this saw right here is my favorite. It's my baby. I'll show you plenty of other saws throughout the process, along with probably at least 20 or 30 different planers that I have. Most of them are block planes. Most of them are just for looks. The fact that they're super rusted or dirty just means I haven't gotten around to cleaning them up yet, which we'll go through each and every process to clean up the right tools. Right now I just showed you saws, planers,